Let us live the latter half of our lives in tranquility. In the latter half of life, let's learn to stand still amidst the chaos without rushing to argue over right and wrong. Sometimes we will be misunderstood, but we shouldn't rush to explain. In this life, there are many things where it's difficult to clearly distinguish right from wrong. Things that seem self-evident can turn into nothing. Things that seem wrong can be necessary lessons for the soul's growth. In the latter half of life, let's learn to humble ourselves a little. When you disagree with your children, don't be quick to anger. When a friend's words unintentionally hurt you, it's okay. These things are like gusts of wind through a veranda. They come and go and cannot be held. When your mind is troubled, you can pick up a broom to sweep the house or wash a load of clothes. In the slow movements of your hands, your mood and thoughts will gradually settle, like a lake's surface after a long, windy night. In the latter half of life, let's not let regret hold us back. Life is a long journey with countless forks in the road. Once you have chosen a path, just keep walking. Many of our choices come from fate and karma, from invisible threads that have bound us to the experiences we must undergo. Therefore, accept what your heart chose in that moment and move forward with serenity. In the latter half of life, let's maintain simplicity. Overly complex thoughts only tangle up our lives. Simplicity is truly a grace bestowed from above. When we embrace simplicity, the aroma of food becomes clearer. We find joy in the light steps we take along the road. We savor carefree conversations with those we love. In the latter half of life, people gradually lose their taste for noise. Serenity becomes more precious than any material possession. For a person with a serene heart, every place is joyful. Every corner turns into a land of peace and bliss. Sometimes, allow yourself to be a little naive. Some matters are best treated with indifference. If something is unclear, don't try to force clarity. If someone is meant to just pass through your life, let them pass. If we only know how to remember, but not how to forget, only know how to calculate, but not how to let go, only know how to be clever, but not a little clumsy, life will always be weighed down. Life already has many burdens. Don't force your heart to carry the extra, invisible bags of competition and comparison. Did you know? In the hurried flow of modern life, we are moving so fast that we forget we are breathing, so fast that we no longer listen to our own inner voice, so fast that we think we must become like this person, must surpass that person, must possess so much to prove our own worth. How many sleepless nights have been spent thinking we are not as good as someone else? How many mornings have we woken up to a baseless sadness just from seeing that someone else's life seems more brilliant than ours? But today, give yourself a gift. The gift of pausing. Sit down gently, listen slowly, and let these words enter the deepest parts of your mind. Take a deep breath in and exhale softly. Starting from this moment, you don't need to try to be a copy of anyone else. You don't need to run a hopeless race. You just need to be here with yourself, like a pure child, listening to the soft call of your own heart. Life is a long journey, and that journey only truly begins when we are willing to turn back and look at ourselves, look at our wounds, look at our desires, Look at the anger and sadness that have taken root. When we look deeply enough, we will understand. When we understand, we will let go. And when we let go, we can finally take hold of our lives again, with hands that are gentle yet steady. This is the awakening of a conscious mind, the first key that opens the door to mastering ourselves, to mastering our lives. Happiness has never come from comparison. Happiness only comes when we know how to feel it from within our own hearts. Have you ever asked yourself why, in so many moments of your life, you feel less happy than others? Why, when you see someone with a grand house, a nice car, a stable job, and a prosperous family, you immediately feel an emptiness in your heart, a sense of falling short, an indescribable feeling of wistfulness. You don't understand why you still eat, still breathe, still live day by day, yet happiness feels like a bird flying overhead, always just out of reach. And then you think, maybe you're missing something. Maybe you're less fortunate than others. Maybe life has given them more and you less. And so, you compare. You compare every little thing, every story, every moment. And while you are comparing, you forget something incredibly important, that you are breathing, you are living, you are present in this precious human life. Comparison is a smoldering fire. It may seem small, but it can burn away all the peace within you, little by little. It is not loud, not fierce. It just quietly scratches at your heart, like a cut that is fine yet deep. You don't see it, but you feel it. It makes you anxious. It makes you tired. It makes you doubt your own worth. And the most regrettable thing is that while you are busy looking at other people's lives, you forget to look at your own life, which is opening before you each day like a magical door. Someone once said that happiness comes not when you have more, but when you feel more. Upon hearing this, many people laugh, thinking it's just empty theory. But after you have gone through enough trials, enough ups and downs, enough storms in your heart, you will understand that to truly feel is to have the ability to see the simple things you once overlooked. A simple meal after a long, tiring day. A morning with warm sunlight touching your skin. A breath without pain. A peaceful night's sleep. A gentle conversation. All of these are blessings. All are gifts that life bestows. But you often see them as so ordinary that you never stop to feel them. Your mind chases after things that are too far away. And as a result, you lose the treasure right at your feet. When the mind knows how to feel, it will be at peace. When the mind is at peace, life naturally becomes gentler with you. The ancients used to say, "Still water reflects the moon. Only a still mind can recognize happiness." But the human mind is often agitated by comparison, by desire, by a feeling of lack, by the gossip of others, by the greed within itself. And when the mind is constantly in motion like this, how can it see the light that already exists in every moment of life? The Lin Ung Dharma channel would like to tell you a story, a very gentle one, but one with enough power to awaken the ability to feel within each person. It is the story of Mrs. Tu's meal. A beautiful story, a very real story. A story that, after hearing it, you will understand that happiness lies not in material things, but in a heart that knows how to cherish the little things. Mrs. Two is 63 years old this year, living in a small house in the countryside. The house is old, worn by the years, but it is always clean, tidy, and has a warm feeling, like a home that has held the presence of many generations. Every evening, she eats a very simple meal. A plate of lush boiled greens, a bowl of rich braised fish sauce, a small piece of braised fish, fragrant with ginger. There are no exotic delicacies, no lavish banquets, no expensive dishes. But she eats with great relish. She eats slowly, savoring every bite, as if it were the happiest meal in the world. Her neighbors are different. Their house is large, a new car is parked in the yard, and their children are very successful. Their meals are always laden with meat and fish, the aroma spreading throughout the neighborhood. People passing by would think they must be very happy, while Mrs. Two must be quite sad because her life is so simple. One afternoon, her grandson came to visit from the city. Looking at her meal, the boy asked a very honest question. "Grandma, why aren't you sad when you see that other people are so much more prosperous than you? Why aren't you envious? Why don't you feel disadvantaged? Why don't you wish you had a prosperous life like them?" She just smiled gently, a smile as kind as the late afternoon sun. She said that she still has teeth to eat. She still has hands to cook. She still has eyes to see the sunrise, and she still has legs to walk to the garden and pick fresh greens. She still has a grateful heart to see that everything in this life is a gift. That is enough. That in itself is happiness. Her grandson fell silent. He didn't understand, but you and I do, because Mrs. Two had touched the core of happiness. Happiness comes not from grand things, but from the ability to see the very small things. Happiness is not in the amount of money you have, but in the peace of your mind. What you see is what you live with. How you feel is how life appears to you. Many people don't realize this, so their lives drift by in exhaustion. They look at what others have and then see what they lack. They see where others are going and then feel where they are falling behind. They see others laughing and think that those people must be living much better lives than they are. But they don't know that behind that smile are countless tears that the other person has had to swallow. They don't know that in that beautiful house, there are still sighs when night falls. They don't know that within that abundance, there are still nameless worries. They don't know that at that luxurious banquet table, there is still an emptiness that cannot be filled. No one can see the entirety of another person's life. Therefore, comparison is meaningless. A monk once said that comparing is like carrying 2 heavy buckets of water on your shoulders and wondering why you are tired, while refusing to put the buckets down. We just keep doing it, tormenting ourselves with unnecessary thoughts, forcing ourselves to stand next to someone else to see if we are taller or shorter, sufficient or lacking, better or worse. Life doesn't force us to compare. Other people don't force us to compare. Only our own minds force us to do it. And when your mind does not let go, you will forever be a slave to comparison. There's an old story about 2 people who once stood before a door to life. One man was fixated on looking at the other's door, constantly measuring whose door was more beautiful, brighter, or sturdier. The other man just quietly looked at his own door and opened it with sincerity. In the end, the person who knew to tend to their own door stepped into a vast world. As for the person who kept staring at the other's door, they spent their whole life standing outside, having forgotten that the only key to open the door was in their own hands. That key is the ability to feel, not to compare, not to demand, not to desire, just to feel. When you practice feeling the small things, you will see your life begin to change. You will find your mind calming down. You will notice your breath becoming lighter. You will see that a simple meal is enough to make you smile. You will realize that the sunlight each morning carries a blessing. You will understand that sadness is not to be feared, for it helps you understand yourself better. You will find that a simple inquiry can warm the heart. You will see that life is not as harsh as you once thought, simply because you have turned inward, have learned to place your attention on what truly matters. Therefore, when you ask why you are not as happy as others, look back and see if you have ever truly felt this life, even once. Have you ever, even once, sat down and looked at what you have? Have you ever, even once, been grateful for the breaths you take, still whole and complete? Or do you only look at what you don't have? Do you only look at what belongs to others? Do you only look at the emptiness and forget to look at the treasures right in the palm of your hand? Happiness is very light, but also very deep. It is not found in material things. It is found in the capacity to feel the small things that life offers every day. And when you know how to feel, how to cherish, how to pause, you will find your mind so peaceful that the noise of the world no longer stirs you. So peaceful that you see others succeed without feeling that you have lost. So peaceful that you feel complete, even when life is still full of difficulties, because your mind is enough. The Lin Ung Dharma channel simply wants to send you a word of awakening. Happiness is always within reach. As long as you place your ability to feel in the right place, life will become as gentle as a cool stream. Live with a grateful heart. Live with eyes that know how to see beauty. Live with a mind that knows how to feel. When the mind is at peace, life is at peace. When life is at peace, the person is naturally serene. Have you ever paused in the middle of an exhausting day and asked yourself why your mind is so easily swept away, like a small leaf in a flowing stream? Have you ever felt that just a careless word from someone can cause ripples in your heart? A cold glance makes your heart heavy? A word of criticism darkens your entire afternoon? And then you ask yourself, why is it so hard to find peace in my life? That is when we discover a truth that many people avoid. We have unintentionally handed the key to our own joy into the hands of others. Whenever someone goes against our wishes, our mind wavers. Whenever others don't respect us, we immediately withdraw into ourselves. Whenever friends or colleagues are a little more successful, our hearts silently stir with turmoil. Our lives are thus led by emotions that do not belong to us, but are reactions to the outside world. We live as if we are a drum, resounding whenever someone strikes it. Many people don't realize this. They think they are angry because the other person was wrong. They think they are sad because the other person was unkind. They think they are in pain because life is unfair. But if you look deeper, you will see something else. We are not hurt by the words of others. We are hurt because we allow those words to penetrate the deepest parts of our hearts. We are not angry because of a rude action. We are angry because we place too high an expectation on the other person. We don't feel self-pity because others are better off. We feel self-pity because we have forgotten our own worth. Our minds are controlled not by others, but by our own reactions to others. That is the crux of the matter. In the ancient teachings, there is a story about a Zen master who lived on a mountain. One day, a man came to him and insulted him with harsh words. The Zen master sat still, not reacting. The more the man spoke, the more agitated he became. Finally, he left, unable to bear the master's serenity. A curious disciple asked, "Master, why didn't you respond?" The Zen master smiled and said, "If someone brings you a gift and you do not accept it, the gift still belongs to them." Insults are the same. If we do not accept them, they remain with the one who spoke them. That story may sound simple, but to practice it every day in our ordinary lives is a journey. Because people often unconsciously reach out and accept everything. Praise is kept. Criticism is kept. A light word is kept. And a hurtful word is kept even more tightly. And so, our hearts become filled with things that do not belong to us. Now, think back to a very ordinary day. You wake up in a pretty good mood, but just a few minutes later at the office, someone utters a slightly harsh remark. And just like that, a happy mind turns into an angry mind. You can't work effectively for the rest of the day. You bring that annoyance home with you. Before your family can even understand what happened, they have to endure your irritable words. And when night falls, you toss and turn, filled with regret. Aren't there many times in our lives when we are like Min in the story I am about to tell? A fleeting emotion from someone else can shatter our entire day of peace. Min is an office worker, an ordinary person, just like any other. He works hard and lives responsibly. But there is one thing Min doesn't realize. He is easily influenced by the words of others. That day, Min was reprimanded by his boss for a mistake he didn't even make. The boss was frustrated due to pressure and casually blamed Min during a meeting. It lasted only 2 minutes, but those 2 minutes shattered Min's 10 hours of peace for the day. When he walked out of the meeting room, he felt the hot blood rush to his face. His mind was like a pot of water that had just been violently stirred. For the entire afternoon, he couldn't concentrate on anything. The feeling of being wronged lingered like a rope tied tightly around his chest. When he got home, he placed that same mood upon the shoulders of his wife and children. He was short-tempered when his child spilled some toys. He was annoyed because the dinner wasn't to his liking. That evening, his wife gently said, "Why do you let a single sentence from someone else cost you your whole day of peace?" Min froze when he heard that, because he realized something he had never thought of before. His boss had scolded him for only 2 minutes, but he himself had been tormenting himself for 10 hours. Those words didn't bind Min. It was Min's own mind that bound him. From Min's story, we see something very clearly. We often take a small event and turn it into a great sorrow. We take a false accusation and turn it into a reason to destroy our own happiness. We let a cold glance from someone else cause us to lose sleep. We let an insensitive remark make us ponder for an entire evening. We hand over control of our emotions to others and then blame life for being unfair. If you look deep into the root cause, you will understand that the problem does not lie with the person who hurts us. The problem lies within ourselves. We react too strongly. We are overly sensitive. We pay too much attention to things that we should treat as lightly as dust. When the child within us is weak, we are easily hurt. When the ego within us is too large, we are easily angered. When our heart lacks a sense of fullness, we are easily prone to self-pity. And when our mind lacks agency, we are easily controlled by others. To master yourself, you must first understand yourself. To find peace, you must first learn not to give power to others. When someone says something unpleasant, our mind still has the right not to accept it. When someone does something wrong, we still have the right not to let it ruin our entire day. When someone succeeds, we still have the right to be happy for them without making ourselves feel small. The key to joy is very small, yet many people give it to others to hold. Then they are surprised when they have to knock on doors every day, asking to have their happiness back from the hands of the world, when that key has belonged to them all along. Let me tell you another story. A man went to see an old master. He complained that he was always upset because of other people's attitudes. When criticized, he was sad. When praised, he was anxious, fearing people would change their minds. The master gave him a glass of water and added some salt to it. Then he told the man to drink the water, which was unpleasantly salty. After that, the master led him to the riverbank. He also threw a handful of salt into the river and told the man to drink the river water. The river water was still fresh and sweet. The master said, "The glass of water is the human mind. The salt is the words of the world. When the mind is small, even small words can cause us suffering. When the mind is vast, even heavy words flow away like water." When you understand this, you will see that the nature of suffering lies not in external circumstances, but in how our minds contain everything. If someone says a harsh word and we pay it no mind, we are at peace. If someone says a gentle word and we ponder it endlessly, we suffer. Others can only hurt us for a second, but we can drag that pain out for a whole day or a whole year. Therefore, to reduce suffering is not to change others, but to change ourselves. It is not about silencing the world, but about opening our own hearts. Once we understand this, we begin to learn how to control ourselves. This is not about suppressing emotions, nor is it about pretending to be strong. Controlling yourself is not letting your mind be carried away by things that are not worthy. It is not chasing after praise and criticism, not seeking validation from others, not placing your joy in the hands of the world. When someone insults you, take a breath. Ask yourself if those words truly belong to you. When someone hurts you, pause and see where that cut comes from. From their words, or from your own excessive expectations. When emotions rise, take a step back to see what is causing the child within you to tremble. From there, you begin to heal. Therefore, to master your life, you must first master your mind. To master your mind, you must clearly see the moments when you are led by others. From there, you learn to turn back and take hold of your own hand. When the world speaks falsely, you remain at peace. When the world speaks truly, you listen and amend. But whether right or wrong, you still do not lose yourself. Peace is your right. No one can take it away if you do not give them the opportunity. When you understand this, you walk through life much more lightly. Every word is just a word. Every glance is just a glance. Every story is just a story. Nothing can penetrate your heart when you have learned how to guard the door to your own mind. In the end, remember one thing. A person who controls themselves is not a person without emotions. A person who controls themselves is one who knows how to recognize their emotions, knows whether to keep or let go, knows what is worth their attention and what should be released. You cannot control the mouths of the world, but you can control your own mind. You cannot stop the wind from blowing, but you can learn to stand firm in the wind. You cannot please everyone, but you can live a life without betraying yourself. Give your mind space to breathe. Let your heart open up like a wide expanse of water. Don't let the words of others become shackles that bind you. Keep the key to your joy in your own hands. Remember that peace is a gift you give to yourself and no one else. And when your heart is sufficiently serene, life will naturally become as gentle as a small stream flowing through a forest, not noisy, not hurried, but with enough strength to nourish a whole soul seeking tranquility. Take a gentle breath and remind yourself of this. My emotions belong to me. My peace belongs to me. The key to happiness is in my own hands, and from today on, I choose not to give it to anyone else. Have you ever wondered why you've lived through so many years, but have never once truly met yourself? There are people who have lived for nearly half a century, yet still don't know what they carry within them, what they fear, what they desire, and what they lack. We tend to look at the outside world so much that we forget that all happiness or suffering begins from within. When we look at others too much, we no longer see ourselves. When we chase after success, fame, position, or the judgmental eyes of the world, we become even more estranged from our own minds. And then, often, in the very quiet evenings, when the noise has subsided, we suddenly realize we are tired. So tired that we don't even know what we are tired from. We are so adrift that we cannot correctly name the sadness in our hearts. That is the moment that signals we have strayed too far from ourselves. There is a gentle but profound truth. The busier people are, the more they forget their inner world. We like to compare because comparison gives us the feeling that we are progressing or that we are inferior to someone else. And that feeling makes us think that we are living. But that comparison creates voids. It erodes the joy that was originally there. It makes us reach for things that do not belong to us and drop what was once dear. When we look at the lives of others to measure our own worth, we are living through the eyes of the world, not our own hearts. And when the heart is not listened to, it becomes cold, sad, and desolate, like a forgotten room. Many people suffer not because life is too harsh, but because they do not know what is happening within themselves. They are hurt without knowing where the wounds come from. They are angry without knowing the root of their anger. They are resentful without understanding what is lacking in their inner world. When we don't understand ourselves, we become like a rudderless boat. Whichever way the wind blows, we lean that way. Wherever the waves crash, we are swept there. A single sentence from someone else is enough to stir up our minds. A glance from someone is enough to make us doubt ourselves. A single comparison is enough for us to lose the peace we once had. Therefore, to gain control of ourselves in this tumultuous life, the first thing we must do is look back at ourselves. Look, not to judge whether we are good or bad. Look, not to blame ourselves. Look to see the deep wounds in our souls that we have ignored for too long. To see the desires we have never dared to name. To see even the limits that we ourselves have erected, and then unwittingly believed to be reality. When we dare to look at ourselves, we embark on the journey of honesty. And honesty with our inner world is the beginning of freedom. There are old wounds that we thought we had forgotten, but in reality, we just shoved them into some dark corner of our hearts. They are still there, silent, and over time, they transform into reactions that we believe are caused by circumstances. We get angry over a small matter. We feel hurt by a careless word. We are easily wounded by an ambiguous attitude. But in truth, all these reactions do not come from the present. They come from an old crack in our souls. To look back at ourselves means to look at those cracks, to reach out and touch them, to understand them, and even to forgive ourselves for having been hurt so much. There are also deep desires in our hearts that we have never dared to voice. We want to be loved, but are afraid of others seeing us as weak. We want to be recognized, but tell ourselves that we don't need anyone to understand us. We want to be an us, but throw ourselves into races to prove our worth. We want to live fully, but are afraid of being criticized for being different. When a desire is not called by its true name, it turns into pressure. Pressure has no sound, but it weighs us down heavily. Only when we look directly at our true desires do we know what we are lacking and what we need to nurture. Sometimes, the limitations we believe are imposed by circumstances are actually ones we've set for ourselves. We tell ourselves we're not good enough, so we don't dare to start. We say that we're not suited for happiness, so we don't dare to open our hearts. We think that our fate only goes so far, so we don't dare to dream further. The greatest limitation comes not from life, but from the beliefs we hold about ourselves. It's like a bird raised in a cage for too long. When the cage door is opened, it still doesn't fly. Not because its wings are weak, but because it believes the sky is not meant for it. To look back at ourselves is to recognize these self-created limitations, to understand that we can be different, to know that the door to life is still open. It's just that we haven't stepped through it. There is a very beautiful story that the Lin Ung Dharma channel wants to tell you. The story of Huai and the dim mirror. Huai was a young man living under the heavy weight of many dissatisfactions. Huai felt his life was at a dead end. His job was not what he wanted. His friends didn't understand him, and his family sometimes made him feel pressured. He often blamed this person, was angry with that person, and believed that all the bad luck in the world chose to fall upon his life. And so, the days passed in resentment, and Huai was completely unaware of how tired he was becoming. One day, Huai's mother walked into his room and saw him complaining. She had been silent for a long time. Then, she said softly, "The mirror in your room is dirty, so whatever you see in it looks distorted." Huai was slightly surprised by her words. Clearly, his mother was just reminding him about the mirror. But why did Huai feel that her words were not just for the mirror, but also for him? He tried to look around the room. The mirror was indeed dim with dust, with time, because he had never thought to wipe it. And then Huai suddenly understood that his mind was just like that mirror, clouded by hurt, by self-doubt, by comparisons, by the times he believed life was unfair to him. If the mirror is dirty, the reflection will be distorted. If the mind is dim, wherever you look in life, you will see instability. When the mind is full of sorrow, we find everyone annoying. When the mind is full of hurt, we hear thorns in every word. When the mind is full of inferiority, we feel lost wherever we go. And Huai realized that. He began to sit down one very quiet afternoon, doing nothing, not chasing thoughts or blaming anyone, just placing his hand on his chest and asking himself what he was truly lacking. For the first time in his life, Huai dared to look deep inside. He saw the sorrows he had tried to ignore, saw the expectations that had never been acknowledged. He saw that he had always wanted to be loved, but was afraid to speak up. He saw that he wanted to be understood, but never spoke his true feelings. When he looked back at himself, Huai no longer blamed others, because he saw that what hurt him the most was not brought by anyone else. It came from the empty spaces in his own mind that had not been filled. It came from wounds that had not been cared for. It came from a lack of inner understanding that he had not realized for so long. That was the first day Huai began to master his own life, not by changing others, not by demanding that life treat him differently, but by cleaning his own mirror. The lesson from that story is actually very close to many of us. When life becomes heavy, we often look outside to find reasons. But the root of all change is always within. If the inner world is bright, we see opportunities everywhere. If the inner world is calm, we feel light wherever we go. If the inner world is full, we don't need to compare to see our own value. To master life, we must first master ourselves. To master ourselves, we must first understand our minds. And to understand our minds, we must dare to look back. Looking back at ourselves is a journey no one can take for us. It requires courage, because sometimes the truth within our hearts is not easy to face. But only when we dare to face our own shadow can we see the light. Only when we touch our pain can we understand the value of healing. Only when we understand ourselves can we lead ourselves forward, to walk completely and clearly on the path of life. And then we will realize that peace is not granted by circumstances. Happiness is not brought by others, and success is not arranged by luck. It all starts from the mind. When the mind is bright, life is bright. When the mind is clear, the path is clear. When the mind is full, life is full. Understanding our inner world is the root of everything we are searching for. So, if you feel tired today, stop for a moment. If you feel lost, turn inward. If you find yourself running too fast without knowing where you are going, sit down and place a hand on your heart. What is the mind saying? What does the mind need? Where is the mind hurting? Just 1 minute of honesty with yourself is enough to open a new door for your life. And when we see ourselves clearly, the path ahead becomes much clearer. No longer dim, no longer wavering, no longer chasing after things that do not belong to us. When we understand ourselves, we no longer try to become someone else. We just need to become complete in ourselves. When you have listened to this point, I just want to offer a gentle reminder that this life does not require you to be perfect. It only wants you to understand yourself. Only when you understand yourself can everything become peaceful. May your mind always be as clear as a newly wiped mirror. May you have enough courage to look back, enough gentleness to forgive, enough light to move forward, and may every step you take from this day on be the step of a person who is truly mastering their own life. Have you ever been in an argument where the more you talk, the more confused your heart becomes, and the more you explain, the more the other person misunderstands? Sometimes life doesn't tire us out because of work or circumstances, but because of words not worth hearing and unnecessary conversations. The more you try to prove you are right, the more others want to prove you are wrong. When the mind of the person you are facing is full of prejudice, all your explanations become fuel for the conflict. The more you speak up, the more your heart is dragged into a tiresome vortex. And then, at some point, you suddenly realize that what hurts you is not the words of others, but the loss of peace within yourself. Many people spend their whole lives chasing the need to speak their minds, to explain clearly, to prove that they are innocent or right. But then they become exhausted from conversations that lead nowhere. People don't listen because they don't want to listen. People don't understand because they don't want to understand. People don't believe because their trust is not placed in you. In those moments, words spring from the mouth but cannot touch the heart. And when words cannot touch the heart, they become meaningless. That is when you need silence. A silence not of weakness, but of wisdom. Not of avoidance, but of awareness. Not to give up, but to protect the peace that is gradually being swept away by the winds of life. The Buddha taught that a person who knows when to be silent is a person who knows how to guard their mind against all storms. Silence is like a bowl of still water. When the water is still, we can see the bottom. When the mind is still, we can see ourselves. A harsh word can create a fire. A wrong word at the wrong time can lead to a lifetime of regret. But silence at the right time can save a day, save a relationship, and even save yourself from carrying something in your heart that you shouldn't. In life, there are things that, when spoken, only make us more tired. There are people who, the more you explain, the more they misunderstand. There are matters that, the more you argue, the more tangled they become. There are feelings that, the more you reveal, the heavier they make your heart. Therefore, silence is not defeat. Silence is knowing when to stop, stopping to keep the peace, stopping to look back, stopping to give the mind space to breathe and recover. Within the word im-lang, silence, are the components im, still, and lang, quiet. When the mind is still, it is not agitated. When the heart is quiet, it is free from affliction. The highest level of self-control is not speaking eloquently or forcefully, but knowing when to remain silent. Silence is not always easy. It's easy to speak up when insulted, easy to react when misunderstood, easy to get angry when pushed into a corner. But the strongest person is the one who dares to choose to be gentle, strong enough to be silent, strong enough not to hurt themselves over meaningless things, strong enough not to place their mind in an unworthy place. In silence, you hear yourself more clearly. You see your anger rise and then dissipate like a cloud. You feel your sadness lighten. You see that your own judgments are not necessarily correct. And you see that people's hearts are not always the same as their words. Silence is also a way of letting go. Letting go of the expectation that others must understand you. Letting go of the desire for everything to go your way. Letting go of the thought that you must always be defended. When you can let go of these things, your mind is returned to a state of lightness. That lightness is like a door of life opening for you to step into a wider sky. No longer chasing after arguments of right and wrong, no longer wearing the armor of self-defense, no longer afraid of what others say. You just live with what is most true to you. And that is enough. I want to tell you a story. The story of Ms. Hang and the endless argument. Ms. Hang was a gentle woman who lived with great affection. One day, she was misunderstood by her neighbors. People said she did something she had never done. The words spread quickly. Each person added a sentence. Each mouth added an idea. And the story became something that weighed heavily on her heart. At first, she chose to explain. She went to each person, clarifying every detail. She thought that if she was just honest, life would return her innocence. But the more she explained, the more people distorted her words. She said one thing. They spread it as 10. She said 10. They spread it as 100. The baseless rumors planted a sense of injustice, disappointment, and helplessness in her heart. One afternoon, she sat on her porch, watching the sunlight slant down, pouring like honey into the yard. She felt her heart was so tired, tired from trying her best and still not being understood. Tired because no one would listen to the words she spoke. Tired because life did not operate in the way she had once believed. And in that moment, she decided to choose silence. She stopped explaining, stopped arguing, stopped trying to prove anything. She simply chose to live true to her heart and let time do what it needed to do. A few weeks later, the matter subsided. People suddenly realized that the story they had heard before had many loopholes. There were many things that didn't make sense, many things that couldn't be true. They began to look back at themselves, to ask questions, to feel remorseful for having believed something unverified. And then, one day, the neighbor who had misunderstood her came to her door and apologized. Not because she had said anything convincing, but because her silence made people look back at themselves. The lesson from that story is very simple, but incredibly profound. Often, silence is the most powerful answer. Silence is not to hide anything, but to let the truth shine on its own. Silence is not to endure, but to give the truth a chance to be seen. Silence is not doing nothing. It is doing the most profound thing the mind can do. When we are silent, we conserve our energy for important things. We don't let our minds get swept up in meaningless matters. We don't let the words of others divert the course of our lives. We don't let small conflicts become deep cuts in our hearts. The scary thing is not what people say about us. The scary thing is that we let our minds be shattered by those words. And silence helps us protect our minds, like protecting a clear stream of water. But silence does not mean avoidance. Silence does not mean ignoring. Silence is knowing to choose the moment not to speak, so that when we do speak, our words have more weight. Words, then, are no longer a reaction, but an awakening. No longer self-pity, but understanding. No longer impulsive, but wise. The person who knows when to be silent will be the person who knows to speak correctly when needed, and their words become exponentially more valuable. Buddhist scriptures teach that words can be like honey, like flowers, like precious gems, but words can also be like knives, like fire. A person can use their words to save people, but can also use them to hurt others. Therefore, a person who knows how to guard their verbal karma is a person who knows how to guard their mental karma. When the mind is peaceful, the words are peaceful. When the mind is agitated, the words are agitated. When the mind is angry, the words are angry. Controlling one's speech is a great form of self-control. But to control speech, one must start with silence. Be aware to see. Be quiet to understand. Be at peace to live. If you pay attention, you will see that truly mature people do not talk much. They rarely justify themselves, rarely argue, are rarely in a hurry to defend themselves. It's not that they don't know how to speak, not that they are weak, but because they know that there are many things in life that do not need to be said. True maturity lies in the ability to keep one's mind calm amidst storms, in the ability not to let the words of the world break the wings of one's heart, in the ability to step past words not worth hearing with light feet. In silence, you learn more than you think. You learn to listen to the rhythm of your breath. You learn to listen to the words of life. You learn to look deeply into others without them needing to say anything. You learn to feel what is happening inside you. And most importantly, you learn to let go of things that do not belong to you. Silence also teaches us the art of observation. When we do not speak, we see more clearly. We can see what others are hiding in their eyes. We can see the motive behind their words. We can see the pain in their voice. And we understand that everyone is fighting a battle of their own. When we understand that, it is easier to empathize, easier to forgive, easier to be gentle with life. Therefore, silence is not a meaningless void. It is a space for the mind to return. It is where we meet ourselves again, where we recover after long days of hurt. Just as the water's surface becomes calm again after the wind, just as the moon becomes full again after the night passes, so too does our mind. When it is quiet enough, it will naturally become bright. And then we will realize that most of the afflictions in the world stem from things we didn't need to say, from arguments we didn't need to win, from pride we didn't need to keep, from angry words we didn't need to utter. When we let go of those things, life becomes much lighter. As you listen to this, I just want to send a gentle reminder that silence is not losing your voice. Silence is reclaiming your strength for the things that are worthy of being said. If you are tired today from unkind words, be quiet for a little while. If you are being misunderstood, let time speak. If you want to explain to someone, ask yourself if they are ready to understand. May you have a peaceful mind, a full heart, a silence as bright as the moon at night, and may peace always be present in every breath you take. Have you ever asked yourself why your heart sometimes feels as heavy as if it were carrying a whole sky full of gray clouds? Why? There are things that happened long ago, but just a small image is enough to make the emotions feel as if they've just been stirred up again. Why do we keep holding on to something that is old? A person who has left, a memory that has faded. Sometimes we know clearly that it hurts us, know clearly that it makes our hearts weary, yet we still cannot let go. It's not because we are weak, but because we haven't learned how to put things down. We haven't been brave enough to admit that not everything is meant to be ours. That question repeats itself in everyone's life. And then we realize that the art of living sometimes lies not in trying to hold on, but in the ability to let go at the right time. Letting go is easy to say, but to truly let go is an arduous journey, because people are inherently afraid of loss, afraid of emptiness, afraid of leaving, afraid of having nothing to lean on. Meanwhile, the mind just likes to cling to what is familiar, and the more it clings, the more it hurts. The more it holds on, the more tired it becomes. It's like a hand tightly gripping a rope. The more you fear letting go, the tighter you grip. And the tighter you grip, the deeper the rope cuts into your flesh. That pain is self-inflicted. But we keep thinking that it's the outside world that is hurting us. The Buddha's teachings once reminded us that all suffering begins with attachment, clinging to what we want, trying to hold on to what was never ours. What is not meant to stay, no matter how tightly you hold on, will eventually fall from your hands. And what is destined for you, even if you let go lightly, will still remain there in your heart. The more a person wants to control everything, the more easily they are disappointed. Because life does not go according to our will. Life is a flow. That flow does not stand still just because we want it to. It does not slow down just because we wish it to. And the more we try to stop it, the more we are swept into the deep waters of anxiety. Looking deep into our minds, we see desires so great they become burdens, hopes so beautiful they become binding threads, memories so cherished they make us forget that we too need to keep living. And that is the moment we need to learn to let go. Letting go is not to lose anything, but to let the heart breathe. Letting go to give the heart space to be at peace. Letting go so that happiness has a place to enter. There is a story in which many people might see a reflection of themselves. The story of Mr. Lamb and his father's old motorcycle, an object not worth much money, but which held a sky full of cherished memories. That old motorcycle was the vehicle his father used to go to work every day. It was the thing his father personally wiped down and maintained, like caring for a dear friend. After his father passed away, the motorcycle became the last thing that still held his warmth. Therefore, for 10 years, Mr. Lamb kept it, even as it gradually broke down, rusted, and was no longer functional. Every time he looked at it, his heart would clench, as if someone had just reopened a compartment of memory that had never healed. The old motorcycle wouldn't start, but the sadness kept smoldering in his heart, year after year. Then one day, his wife gently asked, "Are you holding on to a memory, or are you holding on to pain?" That question made him stop in his tracks, because he realized he had never distinguished between the two. He had thought that keeping the motorcycle was keeping his father, keeping the love, keeping the beautiful past. But in reality, the thing he was holding on to the most was a wound that would never close. If a memento causes us pain, it is no longer a memory, but has become a shackle. He sat for a long time by the motorcycle, touching every scratch his father had once touched, looking at every spot where his father's hands had rested. He knew he loved his father, but he also knew this sadness had been weighing on him for too long. It was time to let his heart be light again. After many days of thinking, Mr. Lamb decided to give the motorcycle to a scrap collector. As the motorcycle was wheeled away from his yard, he stood watching and felt his heart become as light as if he had just put down a heavy rock. He hadn't forgotten his father. He had never forgotten. But he let go of the burden of excessive attachment. And strangely, when he let go, the love became clearer, no longer painful, no longer constricting, only gratitude, only peace. That story brings a lesson. Letting go is not forgetting, but allowing oneself to continue living in the present, allowing the heart to be healed by acceptance. In this life, there is no one who hasn't had to let go of something. A relationship that has run its course, a dream that is no longer suitable, a path that, no matter how long you walk it, does not bring peace, a loved one who has passed away, a sadness that cannot be resolved by clinging to it. We let go when we realize we don't need to control everything. Let go when we know that the more we try to hold on to some things, the more we lose them. Let go when we understand that clinging to pain only makes our hearts more crowded. When we let go, the mind has space to be at peace. When we let go, the intellect has room to be clear. When we let go, the path of life begins to open up. That is why the Buddha taught people to live like flowing water, flowing without clinging, passing through without carrying too many things in the heart, still loving, but not being infatuated, still caring, but not being afflicted by suffering, still connected, but not letting the mind be shackled. A person who knows how to let go is one who understands the truth that everything in life is only borrowed. Nothing belongs to us forever. No one is with us for our entire lives. No happiness can be kept just by holding on. Everything comes and goes according to the laws of karma and destiny. And when we follow those laws, the mind becomes as light as a cloud drifting across the sky. Another important thing is that letting go is not weakness. Many people mistakenly believe that only those who are not persistent enough let go. But in truth, letting go requires many times more courage than holding on. Holding on only requires instinct, but letting go requires wisdom, requires awareness, requires the ability to see the nature of things. It is like a person standing before a door that has long been locked. Anyone can knock on the door, but only the person who understands that the door is no longer meant for them is brave enough to turn away. Turning away, not because of giving up, but because they know that there are many other doors ahead, waiting for them to step through. Letting go is also how we save ourselves from excessive expectations. When we want something too much, when we expect too much from someone, when we desire life to be perfectly according to our will, we will fall into a state of continuous disappointment. Letting go of expectations does not mean giving up on dreams or ceasing to strive, but rather not allowing expectations to become a burden for ourselves and those around us. We do our best and leave the rest to fate. When we do that, we live more lightly, our minds are more open, and joy naturally comes more often. There are also times when we let go of the negative things within us. Letting go of a stubborn ego, of obstinacy, of blame, of old resentments. These things may seem invisible, but they are the heaviest burdens in a person's heart. The more you carry them, the more they hurt. The more you keep them in your heart, the more weary your heart becomes. When you put down a resentment, it is like shedding a heavy stone. When you put down an anger, it is like unlocking your own heart. Letting go is not about forgiving others, but about liberating yourself. And then we will realize that letting go is one of the most profound arts of self-control. A person who knows how to let go is one who can master the waves of emotion within them, not being swept away by anger, not being bound by regret, not being controlled by fear. A person who knows how to let go is one who can look deeply into the nature of all things, understanding that excessive clinging is the root of suffering, and letting go is the path that leads to peace. As Mr. Lamb's story concludes, we understand that what caused him pain was not the old motorcycle, but the sadness that had hung in his heart for too long. When the sadness was put down, the memory became something beautiful again, and the love became a light. That is also why those who learn the art of letting go live as lightly as a passing breeze. It's not that they have less suffering, but that they know not to carry suffering on their shoulders for too long. In the end, the most important thing is that we need to remind ourselves that the lighter the mind, the more peaceful the life. Happiness comes not from how much we can hold, but from how much we know how to put down. Knowing when to let go is knowing how to open the way for happiness. Knowing when to let go is knowing how to return the heart to its inherent peace. Knowing when to let go is a form of mature wisdom. I wish for everyone listening to be able to learn how to put down old sorrows, unnecessary burdens, and things that have made their hearts weary. May you find peace in every breath, find happiness in every moment, and find strength within your own heart. When you choose to let go of things that no longer belong to you. Have you ever experienced a failure that made your heart sink? As if someone had placed a large stone on your chest. A failure that made you feel small. A failure that made you afraid to look at anyone and also afraid to face yourself. Failure has a very unique way of making a person's heart tremble. Not because it is so terrifying, but because it touches the very places where we are most fragile, where our expectations lie, where dreams once shone as brightly as the morning sun, where silent efforts were made that no one saw. And then, when something goes wrong, everything collapses before our eyes, like a building with no support. That pain is real. That sense of falling short is real. That feeling of failure is real. But you know what? It is precisely in such real things that our minds grow. No one grows up on days of clear skies and fluffy clouds. No one becomes strong during months when everything is supported and favorable. Growth often comes from falling, and the first fall in life is always the most painful one, because that is the first time we realize that life does not operate according to our will. It is the first time we feel that effort is not always immediately rewarded. It is the first time we face the very thin line between hope and disappointment. But it is that very fall that truly makes us look back at our own steps and learn how to get back up. Some people ask why failure is necessary on the journey of life. Why must we hurt to grow? Why must we fall to appreciate? Why must we fall to know how to stand up? These questions are very real, very down to earth. Everyone has asked them at some point. However, the Buddha's teachings from thousands of years ago have reminded us that life is a temporary realm. In this temporary realm, everyone must experience the 6 great sufferings, among which is the suffering of unfulfilled desires, the suffering of clinging to what is no longer, the suffering of wanting something when the time is not yet right. Failure, therefore, is not a punishment. Failure is a reminder that we need to step back a little, a reminder that we need to learn more deeply about ourselves. It reminds us that we haven't found the right way, not that we are incapable of walking the path. A person who knows how to control themselves always understands that failure is not the end. A person who controls themselves does not give up when they fail, is not arrogant when they succeed, and knows how to calmly get back up after setbacks. Self-control is the ability to keep one's mind steady through the ups and downs of life, not giving up when difficulties strike, not panicking when everything collapses, not judging oneself by a single brief mistake, and also not considering oneself invincible just because of a temporary victory. A truly mature person knows that in this life, success that comes late is a great blessing, because late success builds a solid foundation in the mind, like an ancient tree. The deeper the roots, the harder it is for the storm to topple it. There is a very mundane but very poignant story. The story of Tuan, a young man who started a coffee shop business. In the beginning, Tuan was full of enthusiasm. He believed that as long as he tried his best, the shop would be bustling with customers. But life does not operate with the simplicity we hope for. The location of the shop was not favorable. Costs piled up, and customers dwindled. Tuan began to manage in every way he could, cutting expenses, working from morning till night, brewing coffee himself, cleaning himself, taking on everything himself. But the more he persisted, the more things went downhill. Then came the time when Tuan could no longer hold on. The shop closed, and debts piled up. He looked at the paper listing his debts, his hands trembling, feeling as if the entire sky had fallen right before his eyes. That is a moment many people have experienced, a moment when the sound of failure echoes so loudly that we think it will follow us forever. There were nights Tuan lay staring at the ceiling and wondered, is it that I can't do anything right? Am I useless? Is this the limit of my life? He once cried in the middle of the night because the feeling of helplessness was suffocating his heart. But it was in those very moments of hitting rock bottom that a new door opened in his mind. Instead of giving up, he decided to sit down and face the failure, not running away, not blaming others, not blaming himself, just quietly looking at what he had done. He realized he lacked experience. He lacked management knowledge, long-term calculation, the ability to observe the market, and even the ability to control his emotions when facing setbacks. He saw that clearly, and he chose to start over. Tuan went back to school, learning from the beginning the knowledge he should have had before opening the shop, learning about service, about management, about operations, about customer psychology. While studying, he also worked part-time in other shops to observe. Each day, he understood more that the reason for his past failure was not because he was incompetent, but because he was not sufficiently prepared. Sometime later, Tuan decided to open another, smaller shop. When things started, he was no longer impatient, no longer under the illusion that just trying was enough. He took steady steps, observed carefully, listened to customers, and adjusted little by little. As a result, the small shop gradually became busy. He did very well, and eventually, all the old debts were paid off. Holding the debt clearance confirmation in his hand, Tuan smiled, a light but deep smile, because he understood that it was his past failure that had led him to a better version of himself. If the first coffee shop had succeeded back then, he might never have learned those important lessons, and he might not be as steady as he is now. Tuan's story is proof that failure is not meant to drag us down. Failure is a test from life to see if we have enough patience to keep going. The weak fall, the strong get up, the enlightened learn the lesson, and the mature are grateful for failure because it makes their minds grow. When we fail, our minds hurt, but after that pain comes clarity. It's like a sprout having to break out of its seed. The breaking is painful, but only when the seed breaks can the sprout rise. In life, there are times when we feel as if we have lost everything. But then time will show us that some things need to be lost to make way for better things. There are people who need to leave our lives so that we can learn to stand on our own. There are dreams that need to fail so that we can realize which path is truly meant for us. There are failures that come at the right time for us to learn how to control our minds in the storm. And there are failures that come late so that we are mature enough to receive them without collapsing. Many people in life do not suffer because of failure. They suffer because they think failure defines their worth. But failure does not evaluate a person. Failure only evaluates a method. A person who fails is not an inferior person. A person who fails is just someone going in the wrong direction. If they know to stop, look at themselves, adjust, and then continue, that person will eventually reach their desired destination. The mind is at peace when it sees failure as a teacher, not an enemy. The teacher is sometimes strict. Sometimes it makes us cry. but it always teaches us something necessary. And the most necessary thing that failure teaches us is the ability to master ourselves. To master oneself in failure is to know how to remain calm, to not let emotions take control, to know that every event has two sides, to know that as long as we are alive, we still have a chance. To master oneself is to understand that a career can be lost, but faith must not be lost. Money can run out, but willpower must not be exhausted. The road may be rough, but the feet must not stop. Some people get up after one failure. Some people get up after 10 failures. No matter how many, each time you get up is a testament to your inner strength. Failure, therefore, is a test of life. When we overcome it, our hearts become brighter. When we overcome it, our minds become deeper. When we overcome it, we no longer tremble before future setbacks. A person who has risen from adversity will have a steadier gaze than someone who has never walked through challenges. A person who has fallen and gotten back up will cherish happiness more. A person who has lost and then found peace again will be more grateful for life. And that is the value that failure brings. After all, we need to remind ourselves that failure is never the end. Failure is just a comma for life to pause for a bit before writing the next chapter. Each new chapter offers a chance to become a better version of ourselves. Therefore, if you are failing, please do not be afraid. Consider it a gentle reminder from life that it is time for you to grow up, time for you to learn more deeply about yourself, time for you to train your ability to master your own mind. I wish for everyone listening to these words to be gentler with themselves. If you fall today, remember that falling is not scary. What is scary is staying still. Let failure be the ground from which you spring up. Let failure be the door for you to step into the most beautiful version of yourself. And let your heart be at peace, knowing that every challenge in life is leading you to a brighter place. Have you ever asked yourself why there are times when you react more strongly than necessary to a very small criticism from someone else? Why at times do you feel self-pity, lonely, scared, or abandoned, even though the person in front of you has no intention of hurting you? Why at times do you feel your heart tremble, feel much weaker and more fragile than the strong facade you put on every day? When we look deeply into ourselves, we realize that within each person, there exists a small child living quietly in the shadows of memory. A child who is lovely but also easily hurt. A child who once cried in silence. A child who once waited for a hug that never came. And it is still there, even today. Before understanding this, we thought that all the emotions we experience belong to the adult in us. But when we slow down a bit, observe a little more deeply, we will realize that many of our current fears actually stem from the wounds of the past. Self-control is not just about managing actions, but also about understanding the layers of emotion that have been sleeping deep within our hearts. It is knowing that sometimes we get angry, not because of what happened today, but because of some unresolved frustration from childhood. It is knowing that we worry not because the present is insecure, but because the child within us once had to face the darkness and silence alone. And because no one was there to protect it, it carried that fear as it grew up with us. when the Buddha taught that humans live in ignorance and suffering because they do not understand themselves. He was not only talking about the illusions in the mind, but also referring to the incomplete pieces of emotion, the fragments of memory that we have buried in the darkness. He once said that to heal pain, one must look directly at it. To let go of afflictions, one must understand the root of the afflictions. And sometimes that root lies in the very inner child that we have long forgotten. Have you ever experienced the feeling of being blamed, even when you did nothing wrong? Have you ever felt that you were not good enough despite trying very hard? Have you ever been afraid that others would leave, even though they were just busy? These feelings do not come from reason. They come from some crack in our childhood. A child who once longed for recognition, but did not receive it. A child who was once neglected, and no one knew how sad it was. A child who was once very lonely. And now, whenever something touches that wound, it trembles and calls out for help from the adult in us. But most of us haven't heard it, because we are busy being adults, busy putting on a strong front, busy thinking that weakness is wrong, busy believing that hurt is something to be buried. And so, that child becomes even more frightened, more self-pitying, more desperate to be seen. And in that silence, it becomes fragile, easily broken, and prone to reacting strongly to any hurt. Therefore, the journey of self-control is also the journey of returning to embrace the inner child. It is a journey of healing to lighten the soul. You cannot master your life if you do not understand your own fears. You cannot be at peace if you have not embraced your weaknesses. You cannot be truly strong if you do not dare to face the tears of yesteryear. When the inner child is still abandoned, the adult on the outside will always be insecure. But when that child is embraced, that adult will become steadfast. The story of Mai is a testament to that. Mai is a woman in her late 20s. She has a family, a stable job, is loved by her husband, and respected by her friends. But inside, she always carried an indescribable sense of anxiety. She often feared her husband would leave her for no reason. Whenever her husband came home late, she became tense. Whenever someone didn't reply to her messages, she thought they were angry with her. She always lived in fear of being abandoned. Even though her rational mind told her nothing was wrong, her heart still trembled. One time, because these worries caused her so much stress that she couldn't sleep, Mai decided to see a psychologist. When asked about her childhood, she suddenly remembered the afternoons when her mother was away for work, often leaving her home alone. She remembered the quiet room, the descending evening light, the long, rhythmic ticking of the clock. She remembered the feeling of waiting, not knowing when her mother would return. She remembered curling up in a corner of the wall, scared, but not daring to cry out loud. And as she recalled that image, tears streamed down her face. The psychologist just gently said, "That little girl has been waiting for you to comfort her for a very long time." And for the first time in her life, Mai realized that her present fear of abandonment was not irrational, but was the cry for help from her inner child. From that moment on, Mai began to learn to listen to her feelings. Whenever the anxiety appeared, she no longer blamed herself for being weak. She would place a hand on her chest and whisper, "I am here. I understand this fear. I will not abandon my feelings anymore." She learned to embrace herself in silence. She learned to comfort the inner child who had never been comforted before. As she did this, her anxiety gradually subsided, not because the outside world had changed, but because her inner world was healing. When the inner child is embraced, the adult on the outside can truly be at peace. That is a profound form of self-control. Not controlling emotions by suppressing them, but controlling them through understanding. Not being strong by pretending, but being strong by facing reality. Not running away from the past, but returning to complete it. Therefore, the journey of maturity is not about becoming cold, emotionless, or closing one's heart. Maturity is about being compassionate with oneself. Maturity is daring to look back at the pains of the past. Maturity is daring to admit that one has been hurt. Maturity is learning to embrace oneself like a gentle mother embracing a small, trembling child. When we learn to forgive the inner child for being weak, for being scared, for once being lonely, we are opening a new door in our minds, a door that leads to true peace. And then we realize that to heal, we must return. To be at peace, we must understand ourselves. To live a light-hearted life, we must know that everyone carries a child waiting to be heard. None of us is perfect. No one grows up without carrying some scars. But what's important is whether we have enough gentleness to soothe those scars. I just want to send you a gentle word. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Look into your mind and ask what the child within you needs. Maybe it just needs you to say that you won't abandon it anymore. Maybe it just needs you to embrace it once in your imagination. And when you do that, you are healing yourself, little by little. I hope you always have enough love to return to yourself. I hope you have enough peace to listen to your heart's voice. And I hope that the child within you will be comforted so that the adult in you can live more lightly each day. Have you ever lived a day where just a single sentence from someone could make your mind waver? A word of criticism could make you sad for the whole afternoon. A suspicious glance could make you confused. A casual comment from someone could make you wonder if you were doing something wrong. Sometimes, just one unkind word makes you want to give up, even though the path you've chosen is still bright and right. Sometimes, just a groundless rumor is enough to make you lose sleep. And sometimes, just hearing someone say you can't do it makes you falter, simply because you're afraid of being judged. If you have ever been like that, you are not alone. Because most of us have, at some point, let the words of others control our minds. We are afraid of being spoken ill of. We are afraid of being misunderstood. We are afraid that others will think we are not good enough. We are afraid of scrutinizing eyes and the sharp tongues of the world. Many people live their entire lives just to please others, forgetting that they are the ones who have to live their own lives. Some people wear a mask their whole lives to be accepted. Some people try to be perfect to avoid being judged. Some people force themselves to live by the standards set by others. But the more we live like that, the more exhausted we become. Because we eat what others like, do what others want, and follow the path that others have drawn, we gradually forget who we really are. The Buddha once taught that the words of the world are inherently impermanent. When the wind blows, waves stir, When people's hearts change, their words change. We cannot control the words of the world. We can only control our own minds. He said that if our minds are steadfast, the words of others are like wind blowing through the leaves. But if our minds are weak, the words of others are like knives cutting into our flesh. Therefore, to master our lives, the first thing we must learn is not to let the words of others touch our inner world. There is a very strange thing. People are easily hurt by things that are not truly important. A word from a stranger sometimes hurts us more than the words of a loved one. A criticism from someone who doesn't understand us can sometimes haunt us for years. We spend too much energy defending ourselves against what others think, but not enough time listening to what our own hearts desire. We forget that others only see a few parts of our lives, while only we know the hardships and efforts we have made. Yet, we let those few superficial comments divert the entire course of our lives. Have you ever wondered why people fear gossip so much? It's because, deep down, everyone wants to be recognized, to be loved, to be accepted, to be praised for being good. But life does not go according to our will. The world has 1,000 mouths, so there are 1,000 different opinions. If you live kindly, they say you are weak. If you live strongly, they say you are arrogant. If you live quietly, they say you are eccentric. If you live openly, they say you are boastful. The truth is, no matter how you live, there will always be someone who is not pleased. If you keep chasing after their approval, you will be exhausted before you have a chance to live true to yourself. In the neighboring village, there is the story of Ms. Lan, a 38-year-old woman with a heart full of determination, but also full of self-consciousness because she never had the chance to go to university. Her youth was spent in days of working at the market, doing hired labor, and taking care of her family. When she saw her friends with stable jobs, degrees, and opportunities for advancement, she couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. But she didn't resent her life. She just quietly held a small dream in her heart that one day she would get to study. At the age of 38, when her children were older and her life was somewhat stable, she decided to enroll in a work-study university program. But as soon as that information spread, the neighbors began to gossip. They said, "What's the point of studying at her age?" They said, "Old people can't absorb knowledge." They said, "She just likes to show off." They said, "She should know her place." Those words were like small needles pricking her self-esteem. There were times she wanted to give up. There were times she was confused, wondering if she was doing something meaningless. But then, one night, sitting by a small lamp, she asked herself a question. In the end, who is living this life? And when the answer appeared, she knew she couldn't let go of her dream because of what people said. So she continued to go to school after work, studied late at night, managed housework while studying, and took exams while busy with her children. There were nights she was so tired, she fell asleep at her desk. There were mornings she had to force her eyes open after only a few hours of sleep. But every time she wanted to give up, she remembered that she was not studying to prove anything to anyone, but for herself. Studying to live true to a dream that was once missed. Studying to stand firmly on her own 2 feet. On her graduation day, she wore a blue graduate's gown, standing in the schoolyard with people much younger than her. She held her university degree, her hands trembling, not from shame, but from pride. At that moment, all the criticism from the world became a gentle breeze. Ms. Lan looked up at the sky and said, "I live for me." That sentence was like an awakening, a reminder that life is one's own, not someone else's. The journey ahead is for us to walk, not to be controlled by the mouths of the world. Ms. Lan's story is not just a story about education, but also a story about courage. The courage to live true to oneself. The courage not to be swayed by the words of others. The courage to face scrutinizing eyes without losing one's dream. And that story is also a reminder that everyone has the right to pursue what they want, regardless of age or circumstance. After hearing this story, we realize one thing. Others have the right to speak, but we have the right not to let them touch our inner world. Others have the right to judge, but we have the right to continue on our own path. Others have the right to laugh, but we have the right not to live by their standards. Life is short. If we spend our whole lives living according to the wishes of others, we will have no time left to live according to our own. And the saddest thing is not being misunderstood by the world, but misunderstanding ourselves. Therefore, self-control is learning how to adjust one's mind in the face of the world's words. It is learning to stay clear-headed when spoken ill of. It is learning to stand firm when looked down upon. It is learning to know what you want, no matter what the world says. When we clearly know our own value, we are no longer pulled away by meaningless opinions. When we clearly know our own direction, we no longer get lost because of gossip. When we understand that happiness comes from our own perception, we are no longer hurt by worthless words. And then you will realize one thing. The people who speak ill of you cannot live your life for you. The people who criticize you cannot take responsibility for your life. The people who judge you cannot feel your pain, your sadness, or your joy. Yet you let them decide your direction. Isn't that a waste? When the mind is steady, life is steady. When the heart is at peace, the path is bright. When we are confident in ourselves, we don't need validation from anyone. You may not be perfect, but you can be authentic. You may not be loved by everyone, but you can love yourself. The most important thing is not to live in a way that others praise, but to live in a way that does not betray yourself. I would like to offer you a gentle reminder. Whenever someone says something unpleasant about you, close your eyes and ask yourself, does this remark make me a better person? If not, let it pass like the wind. Don't let the words of others decide your life. Live righteously. Live truthfully. Live as yourself. I hope your mind is always bright enough not to be dimmed by the words of the world. I hope you are always strong enough to continue on your own path. And I hope you are always peaceful enough to live a life not controlled by the eyes or mouths of the world. Have you ever asked yourself why you are always running, always chasing, always searching for something distant that you yourself don't even know what you're looking for? Have you ever wondered why each day passes in a rush, full of stress, feeling as if time is being cut into shreds by someone's scissors, and you have to try to gather every piece to reassemble your life? We seem to always believe that happiness lies in a place not yet reached, in an achievement not yet attained, in a future that is still hazy ahead. Rarely do we look at the moment we are living in and quietly ask, could happiness be right here? In something very small and very simple. Some people chase after money. Some chase after fame. Some chase after the affection of others. And some chase after the standards that society places on their shoulders. And people chase after the invisible comparison that is eroding the peace in their minds. But then one day, they get tired, they stop, and they realize that sometimes life doesn't require that much. A deep breath is enough to soothe the heart. A peaceful meal with loved ones is enough to warm the heart. A full night's sleep after long days is enough for us to feel lucky. A morning where we can still open our eyes, see the sunlight, and get out of bed on our own 2 feet is also a blessing that we often forget. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering lies in a mind that does not know how to stop. The mind keeps running, keeps looking outward, keeps thinking that only what is far away is important. When the mind does not stop, the eyes cannot see the beauty that is present. The ears cannot hear the silence that surrounds us, and the heart cannot feel the joy that is gently touching our lives. If we are always looking toward tomorrow, we will drop today. If we are always comparing ourselves to others, we will lose ourselves. And if we keep thinking about what we don't have, we will forget the things we are holding. There is a story about Mr. Bay that I want to tell you. An ordinary, down-to-earth man who lived a life just like many others in small rural areas. For several decades, he dedicated himself to his work, to the seasons, to the worries of providing for his family. He rarely paid attention to his own breath, rarely lifted his head to look at the sky each morning, rarely asked what his heart wanted. He always thought he had to do more, earn more, and provide more for his children. He forgot that happiness needs to be nurtured to blossom. Then one day, he fell ill. The illness came suddenly, like a powerful reminder that no one can run forever without stopping. During his days in the hospital, he reflected. He remembered the afternoons he walked past the fields without seeing the golden color that painted the earth and sky. He remembered the meals his wife prepared, which he only ate hastily before rushing back to work. He remembered the times his children wanted to talk, but he was too busy to listen. It was only when faced with the fragility of human life that he realized how many beautiful things in life he had missed. After he recovered, he changed. Each morning, he woke up a little earlier. He walked around the neighborhood. He looked at the rising sun as if looking at an old friend he had forgotten to greet for decades. He told everyone that he used to chase money to the point of forgetting his own breath. Now, just feeling the sunlight touch his skin, just hearing the birds sing in the garden, just feeling the wind blow across his face, he feels peace in his heart. Mr. Bay's story is not a rare one. Many people only learn to appreciate the present when they face loss. Some lose their health, some lose loved ones, some lose their youth, while continuing to live for things that are not truly important. And then, when they look back, they see that happiness had never left them. It was just that they were moving too fast to realize it was standing by the roadside, smiling at them. We often mistakenly believe that happiness needs to be grand, that we'll only be happy when we buy a big house, only confident when we have a prestigious job, only feel worthy when we are praised by others. But in reality, happiness is much simpler. A warm meal, a healthy loved one, a call from a long-lost friend, a rainy afternoon spent sitting indoors, listening to the sound of the falling water, a deep breath to know that you are still alive. All of these are priceless gifts that we often fail to see. Once, a person came to the Buddha and asked, "How can I obtain happiness?" The Buddha did not answer with a long philosophy. He simply said, "Live truly in the moment that you have." Not yet understanding, the person asked again, "What must I do to touch peace?" The Buddha just replied gently, "Just know that you are breathing. Know that you are living. Know that you are present, and you will find peace on your own." That message is not just advice, but a path for the mind to return to itself. When the mind returns to the present, the external agitations can no longer easily pull us away. If someone placed a door in your hands and said it was the door to the future, you would be curious and open it immediately. But if someone placed another door in your hands and said, "This is the door to the present," you would probably be indifferent, thinking that you are already living in it every day. In truth, the door to the present is the most important door, because if you do not step into it with awareness, you will forever be lost in the corridor of anxiety and regret. A person who appreciates the present is not someone with fewer problems, but someone who does not let problems pull them away from the moment they're living. When we learn to stop and feel, the mind becomes softer, soft enough to see clearly what is causing us suffering, soft enough to let go of what is unnecessary, soft enough to open our hearts to the peace that is waiting within. Happiness does not need to be chased. It only needs to be recognized. Small things like breath, footsteps, light, laughter, and silence are all messengers of peace. Therefore, when you feel your heart is too heavy, try sitting down, placing a hand on your chest, gently closing your eyes, breathing in deeply, and then exhaling slowly. Listen to the steady beat in your chest. Realize that you are still living. Realize that life is still unfolding. Each new moment a miracle. To appreciate the present is to open the door that brings the mind back to its peaceful home. No one can keep their youth forever. No one can keep their loved ones forever. No one can keep the things they love forever. But if we know how to appreciate the present, every moment lived will become a shining gem in our memory. A person who knows how to live each moment fully will have an inner world less shaken by the storms of life. A person who can feel the ordinary things will always have an inner anchor when the world outside becomes too noisy. Life does not need too many wonderful things to bring happiness. It only needs the ordinary things for which we are grateful. A morning where we can still open our eyes. A day where we can still walk. An afternoon where we can still sit with the one we love. An evening where we can still hear the wind through the roof. All are worthy of appreciation. When we are grateful for the present, our hearts are naturally at peace. When we respect the moment we are living, we naturally find the root of true happiness. And now, as you are listening to these words, you are also living in a precious moment. A moment that, if you know how to turn your mind toward it, you will feel the warmth of life spreading gently through every cell. Let your heart slow down a little. Let your mind settle a little. Let yourself open to the present like a flower gently blooming at dawn. I wish for you to know how to cherish every moment you are living. I wish for peace to always be within you. I wish for you to know when to stop at the right time to hear the gentle call of happiness from within. How many times in your life have you stood before a choice where your heart wanted to step forward, but your feet remained still? How many times have you known you needed to change, but told yourself, "I'll deal with it tomorrow"? How many times have you watched others move forward, secretly wishing you could do the same, but in the end, you remained comfortably in your familiar safe zone? Hesitation is a silent shadow. It follows us from when we are young until our hair turns gray. It blocks our path, suffocates our will, and makes life slow down more than we wish. Some people fail because they are not capable enough, but most fail because they do not start. Talent can be cultivated over time. Experience can be learned day by day. But determination can only be ignited by oneself. If the fire within us is not bright, no matter how beautiful the plan, it will just lie dormant like a blank sheet of paper in a drawer. We often think that to take action, we need strong motivation, favorable circumstances, and the support of others. But in reality, what we need first is the smallest bit of courage from within. The courage to tell ourselves that we will take a step. The courage to dare to try, even if victory is not certain. The courage to dare to go, even if the road ahead is still foggy. Why do people hesitate? Because of fear. Fear of being wrong, of lacking, of losing, of being ridiculed, of not being good enough, of trying and not succeeding, of being judged by others. These fears are like layers of fog covering the mind, preventing us from seeing the true strength that lies within. People fear failure so much that they dare not try. But then, by not trying, they fail in a different way. That is failure right from the starting line. In the scriptures, the Buddha once taught that the human mind has a tendency to cling to the familiar. Every time it has to step out of what is well known, the mind becomes anxious. But he also said that life changes when the mind knows how to move forward. A drop of water, if it stays still, will become stagnant. A tree, if it stops growing, will wither. A person, if they constantly hesitate, will gradually lose their willpower. Hesitation is a layer of dust on the mind. If it is not wiped away for a long time, it will block the light within. Many people ask me why they cannot be determined, even when they know they need to change. I often say that what is lacking is not knowledge, not opportunity, but belief in oneself. For a person to be brave, they must believe they can. Believe that they are worthy. Believe that they are no less than others. Believe that even though the journey is difficult, every step is worthwhile. When there is belief, willpower naturally strengthens. When willpower is strong, discipline appears. Discipline keeps us going when enthusiasm fades. And it is persistence that connects us to the final result. I remember the story of Hu, a young man with many dreams, but who was held back by hesitation for many years. Hu loved fixing motorcycles since he was a child. He hoped to one day open his own shop, to make a living doing what he loved. But he didn't dare. Every time he wanted to do it, he would think he didn't have enough capital. enough experience, enough connections. So he would sit down at his desk and write a plan. The plan was beautiful, detailed, and complete. The plan made even himself feel excited. But then he would put it in a drawer with the promise to look at it later. A week passed, a month passed, a year passed, then 2 years, then 3 years. In those 3 years, whose life didn't change at all, while the plan lay dormant in the drawer, a testament to his prolonged hesitation. One time, a friend came to visit, and seeing the thick stack of papers on the desk, opened it. After reading it, the friend just smiled and said something that left Hu speechless. "Your plan is the best among all my friends, but it's only beautiful on paper." The friend's words weren't harsh, but that light remark awakened Hu. He realized that if he didn't start, he would forever live a life he didn't want. The next day, he decided to open the shop. He didn't wait for enough capital, for favorable circumstances, or for others' support. He endured shortages, learned little by little, corrected his mistakes, and did every small task. And a miracle happened. 6 months later, his small motorcycle repair shop had a stable customer base. He didn't get rich immediately, nor was he brilliantly successful. But he was living the life that he had previously only dared to write on paper. What made him change was not new knowledge, but the determination to live true to what he wanted. Hugh's story is not a rare one. Many of us have unfinished projects, dormant plans, and dreams gathering dust. Some want to change careers, some want to study more, some want to take care of their health, some want to change their lifestyle. Year after year, the only thing that changes is their age, while they themselves have not yet set foot on the path they truly desire. Why are we so prone to hesitation? Because the mind always loves safety. Safety is a warm blanket, even if it's old and musty. Stepping out of it means facing the cold wind. But the cold wind is what awakens the body, just as difficulties help the mind to mature. We fear difficulty, but it is difficulty that forges willpower. We fear failure, but failure is the foundation for learning how to stand firm. People do not grow in ease. People grow when favorable circumstances turn into adversity, and they still manage to hold their course. The Buddha once said that the flow of water in the present is life force. Stagnant water will grow moss. It is the same with people. Hesitation makes the mind stand still. A mind that stands still for a long time will breed fear. Fear, in turn, makes us continue to hesitate. That cycle can only be broken when a person dares to act. It doesn't need to be a big action, just a small step. One step is enough to change direction. One step is enough to open a new door. One step is enough for us to realize that our strength is greater than we thought. Some people wait for the perfect circumstances to act, but perfect circumstances never come. Some people wait until they are truly skilled to begin. But if you don't begin, how can you become skilled? Some people wait for others to believe in them. But if you don't even believe in yourself, who can believe for you? Happiness and success both love action. They don't come to those who just sit and wait. They come to those who dare to get their hands dirty, dare to take a step, dare to make mistakes, and do it again. Therefore, when you feel yourself hesitating, ask yourself a very simple question. If today were your last day, what would you do immediately, without waiting? When we ask this question, we often realize that our hesitation is not because we can't, but because we are not truly determined. Life waits for no one, and neither do opportunities. Time certainly doesn't wait, and the youthfulness, enthusiasm, and passion in our hearts will gradually diminish with the years. A person who knows how to live is one who knows not to let hesitation take up the best years of their life. Therefore, to control oneself, one must first adjust one's willpower. When willpower is firm, discipline will follow. When discipline is strong enough, action will be sustained. And when action is sustained, results will come sooner or later. Determination is not something grand. It is just a promise to oneself that you will not give up halfway. A promise that you will move forward, even if slowly. A promise that you will live true to what you desire. But then we realize that determination is not born naturally. It grows from the times we push hesitation aside and step forward. It strengthens from the times we dare to do what we fear. And it becomes enduring when we know to look back at the path we have traveled to see how many obstacles we have overcome. Everyone has doors waiting for them to open. The door of a career, the door of a dream, the door of self-change. But the door only opens when we turn the key. And that key is not in anyone else's hands, but our own. To conclude this part, I just want to send you a gentle word. Don't let your life pass by in hesitation. Don't let your dreams be forgotten in a drawer. Don't let fear diminish your courageous heart. Start with the smallest thing. Take one very light step, and life will open the way for you. I wish for you to have enough faith to step, enough courage to act, enough persistence to go to the end, and enough peace not to be knocked down by the challenges on the path of life. Have you ever asked yourself why your life always feels heavy? Why you always feel like you're behind others? And why you always feel helpless every time you look at the achievements of those around you? Have you ever sat alone in a dark room, looking at the glowing phone screen with pictures of people traveling, buying houses, buying cars, having a happy family? And you ask, why is their life so easy while I'm still struggling? Comparison seeps into the heart like a cut, making us not only feel pain, but also feel small. Every time we look at the achievements of others, we feel inadequate, feel like we are falling behind, feel that we are not good enough. That question becomes a rope that binds our souls and makes us lose the joy of living. In Buddhist teachings, there is a very profound point. The greatest suffering of human beings comes not from material lack, but from never knowing what is enough, from looking at others too much while forgetting to look back at oneself. The Buddha once taught that the mind is the root of all suffering, and among the afflictions of the mind, comparison is one of the silent thorns that exhausts people the most. When we compare, the mind gives rise to desire. When the desire is not met, the mind gives rise to suffering. That suffering then becomes the seed of anger, of dissatisfaction, of low self-esteem, and gradually turns us into someone who always sees life as unfair. Therefore, every time you feel you are not as good as someone else, ask yourself, does this suffering really come from what I lack in my hands? Or does it come from looking in the wrong direction? There is a very ordinary story that contains a great lesson about comparison. Min and An are sisters. Min is the older sister, living alone, free, with a light job, and a lot of time for herself. An is the younger sister, married, with 2 young children, and a pretty good job. Every time she met An, Min always felt inferior, because her sister had everything Min thought she didn't have. Min looked at An's family, at An's new house, at the trips An took with her husband and children, and a sense of envy arose in her heart. Min asked herself, why is my younger sister more successful? Why does An have a happy family while I am still alone? Why does An have everything that I have struggled for many years to get and still don't have? Min didn't say it out loud, but comparison crept into every thought, every glance when she looked at her sister. Until one day, An asked very gently, are you happy, sis? Min hesitated, not knowing how to answer, and smiled kindly and said, you have things that I don't have. You have freedom, time, health, and your own space. You can wake up when you want, sleep when you're tired, go when you like, stop when you need to. As for me, I live in a tight cycle, worrying about my children, my husband, my job, with no quiet moment of peace for myself. People look at me and think I have everything. But if I could trade for one day of not being a mother, not chasing after responsibilities, I would want to try it. After hearing that, Min was stunned. For the first time, Min realized that she had only looked at the things she didn't have and forgotten the things she possessed. And her sister, An, was also looking at her with a similar longing. When 2 people desire each other's lives, both are suffering because they are not living their own lives, but are trying to place their minds in the lives of others. Min realized that comparison truly only makes people suffer more. Because when we compare ourselves to someone, we only see the surface of their life, a tiny part of the whole picture of their life. We don't see the worries, the pressures, and the losses they have to endure. We only see the light, but not the darkness behind it. It's like looking at a beautiful flower, but not seeing the stage where the flower had to endure hot sun, cold dew, and pests before it could bloom. Therefore, on the journey of life, each of us has our own path. No 2 are alike. No one is completely the same as another. Your path may not be as brilliant as others, but it has stretches that are so peaceful, which others may never have. Your path may not have reached its destination yet, but you have gained valuable lessons with every step. Some are rich when young, but lonely when old. Some are poor when young, but at peace in their later years. Some succeed early, but fall early. Some are slow, but walk very steadily. Every journey is a lesson. Every life is a path with doors that open according to timing, according to destiny, and according to the maturity of the mind. When we understand that each person has their own itinerary, we will look outward less and begin to look inward more. We will ask less, why do they have it, and I don't? We will blame life less for being unfair, desire less for things that do not belong to us, and begin to appreciate what is present. Because comparison does not make us better. Comparison only plunges us deeper into suffering. When we don't know what is enough, are not grateful, and are not at peace, the mind will always be in turmoil. But when the mind knows what is enough, we can open the door to peace within ourselves. When the mind is grateful, we find joy in every small thing. When the mind is at peace, we can maintain a sense of lightness amidst a life full of changes. There are people who seem very successful, but live under so much pressure that they cannot sleep. There are people who seem very happy, but hide wounds in their hearts that no one sees. And there are also people who seem to have nothing, but when they sit down, they can feel a great tranquility in their minds. What creates happiness is not what we have, but how we feel about what we have. If we are always looking up, we will always feel we are lacking. If we know to look sideways, we see that we have enough. If we know to look inward, we see that we are at peace. In Zen, there is a very profound saying: "The mind is like the surface of a lake. If the lake is agitated, it cannot reflect the image of the sky. If the mind is disturbed, it cannot see the nature of life." Comparison is the wind that ripples the surface of the lake. Every time we compare, we let our minds be stirred. When we learn to stop comparing, the mind begins to settle. When the mind settles, we see ourselves, see our true worth, see the efforts we have made, and see what we have. And from there, we begin to be grateful for our own lives instead of wishing for the lives of others. At some point, you will realize that this life is not a race. No one wins, no one loses. The only thing to do is to live your own life to the fullest, living with your own mind, with your own breath, with your own experiences. When you stop comparing, you will feel light. When you stop looking at others, you will feel your heart open. When you know how to appreciate what you have, every moment becomes precious, and it is at that moment that happiness appears. So, on the journey of mastering your life, a very important step is to learn not to put yourself on the scales with anyone else. Others may go faster than you, but they cannot live your life for you. Others may be more successful than you, but they do not bear your hurts for you. Others may be richer than you, but that does not define your value. You are a unique being in this life. You have your own journey, your own lessons, your own time to bloom. Believe that every flower blooms at its right time. An early bloomer is not the most beautiful flower. A late bloomer is not the least beautiful. What makes a flower beautiful is that it blooms when its time has come. Your life is the same. It is unfolding each day at your own pace. It doesn't need to be fast. It doesn't need to be like anyone else's. It just needs to be true to you. And when you walk at your own rhythm, life becomes much lighter. In the end, the lesson of this part is just a very gentle reminder that everyone is walking on their own path. That path does not need to be compared to anyone's. It just needs to be right for oneself. You walk your path, others walk theirs. Happiness comes when you know what is enough, are grateful, and are at peace. I wish for your mind to always be as light as a cloud. I wish for your steps to be as firm as the earth. I wish that every day you live is a day you feel complete. Have you ever asked yourself why there are times when you try very hard, but life still doesn't go as you wish? Why are there days when you live decently, kindly, and in accordance with human morality, yet life brings challenges that seem beyond your strength? Have you ever looked up at the sky and wondered if God sees the good things you are trying to keep in your heart, and whether your kindness will be reciprocated or just fall into the invisible void of life? That is a common concern for many people in life. Not everyone receives good things immediately after they do good things. Kindness is not always repaid at the right time. Some people live virtuously, but encounter nothing but misfortune. Some people are very gentle, but suffer many losses. Some people always think of others first in everything they do, but then are unexpectedly misunderstood. These things sometimes make people doubt whether living a good life has any meaning anymore. But in the teachings of the Buddha, there is a very clear lesson. Good karma is never lost. All the seeds we sow, even the smallest ones, will find their soil to sprout in. This life operates on cause and effect, on destiny and karma, on invisible threads that connect every action, every thought, every choice we make each day. When our minds are right, the universe will bring the right people and the right things to us. When we live virtuously, life naturally becomes lighter. This is not something mystical. It is a natural law of life. People may not see it immediately, but life never forgets. Try to look back at the times when your heart was most at peace. Most of them were when your mind was clear, when you hadn't done anything against your conscience, when you weren't competing with anyone, when you didn't put your personal interests above all else. At those times, no matter how difficult life was, at the very least, you still maintained peace from within. And when there is inner peace, the ability to stand firm before any of life's storms becomes stronger. In a small town, there was a man named Thin, whom everyone called Uncle Thin. He was an ordinary bus driver, living a simple life, not rich, not prominent, but loved by everyone. Not because he was eloquent or had any special abilities, but because of the way he lived. Every day, he drove the bus. He paid attention to each passenger. If there was an elderly woman, he would gently help her off the bus, fearing she might fall. If someone dropped a scarf, he would call them back to return it. Sometimes, seeing a sick person running to catch up, he would stop the bus and wait a little longer, because he knew that if they missed that bus, they might have to wait for an hour in the scorching sun. The things he did were not grand, but they were full of humanity. To him, it was just as natural as breathing. He didn't expect anyone to remember his kindness or to repay him, because he thought that living virtuously was his choice, not a demand for others to reciprocate. But this life has a very special quality. When a person sows enough good deeds, good things will come to them in ways they might not even expect. One day, Uncle Thin's bus broke down in the middle of the road. This incident prevented him from continuing his work. The bus needed repairs, but the cost was too high for his income. He looked at the bus, his heart heavy. If it couldn't be fixed, he might have to take a break from work for a while. And if he did, his already meager income would be greatly affected. While he was worrying, a young man approached. He was a regular passenger, but Uncle Thin didn't remember him clearly. The young man asked if he needed any help. He smiled kindly and said, "The bus is broken, and the repair cost is too high, so I don't know what to do." The young man looked at him for a moment and then said, Let me take care of the repairs." Uncle Thin was stunned. He asked, "Why would you help me?" The young man simply replied, "Because you helped me once. It was a very rainy day. I was late for an exam. I was soaked. And I was almost desperate, thinking I wouldn't make it in time. You stopped the bus longer to wait for me to run up. Thanks to you, I made it on time and did well on my exam. That day changed my entire academic result. I haven't forgotten your kindness. You sowed good, so today you reap it." After hearing that, Uncle Thin could only stand still and smile. It was the smile of someone who understood that living a good life is never meaningless. Even as time passes, even as life sweeps people into its worries, the good deeds we sow remain in someone's heart, and sooner or later will return to us in some form. Uncle Thin's story makes us realize one thing. A person who lives virtuously may not get rich immediately. A person who lives a good life may not be praised immediately. But a person who lives kindly always has peace from within. And then, when the time is right, heaven will naturally arrange things. It's not a magical reward, but a natural response from life to kind hearts. So there are times when we feel we are at a disadvantage, times when we are misunderstood, times when we help someone a lot, but in return, they treat us badly. And we ask ourselves if we should continue to live kindly. But please remember that living a good life is not to be praised, not to be repaid. Living a good life is to keep our minds bright. When the mind is bright, the path is bright. When the mind is virtuous, the heart is at peace. When the mind is steady, life has less suffering. On the journey of learning to control ourselves, the first thing we must learn is not to suppress emotions or force ourselves into discipline, but to learn to choose goodness. When we choose goodness, our minds become brighter. When the mind is bright, we naturally act correctly. When we act correctly, our lives create the right energy. And when the mind is right, the universe will bring the right people and the right things. That is how life works. No one can take away your peace if you do not allow it. Peace is something that lies within, not something others can touch. They can only make you waver if you hand over the key to your emotions to them. But if you keep that key in your hand and know that every kind act you do is a brick building the foundation of your happiness, you will no longer be afraid. When we treat others well, the good comes not only from others, but also from ourselves. A kind heart helps us sleep better, helps us get angry less, helps us feel lighter. A person who lives with a good heart always has a light in their eyes, a softness in their speech, a slowness in their actions. Such a person creates a sense of stability wherever they go, and heaven always sees these things. In the end, a person who lives a good life never loses anything. What they receive is peace in every breath, serenity in every sleep, and clarity in every thought. When we live righteously, kindly, and with a heart free of calculation, good things will come at the right time, maybe not early, but definitely. The lesson of this part is a very gentle reminder that as long as you live a good life, heaven will naturally arrange things. We don't need to worry too much about whether we will be rewarded or not. We just need to keep our minds bright, choose goodness, live kindly with everyone, and act correctly in every small matter. That is the foundation of all lasting happiness. I wish for you to always keep the light in your heart. I wish for your steps to always encounter good things. I wish for everything you sow to blossom at the right time. Have you ever sat down at the end of the day and asked yourself, why do I feel so tired? Why does my heart still lack a space of peace every morning when I wake up? Why, despite trying so hard, does my heart still feel heavy? These questions are not yours alone, but belong to many people walking amidst this hurried stream of life. The older people get, the farther they feel from themselves, like someone running in the fog, no longer remembering why they started. We are always chasing after work, after expectations, after praise, after the eyes of the world, to the point of losing our own breath. The breath is where we are born, and it is also where we return. Yet, how long has it been since we truly took a deep breath? How long has it been since we placed a hand on our chest and felt the heartbeat that has been patiently accompanying us? People often say that to master life, you must understand yourself. But to understand yourself, you must know how to stop. And stopping must begin with a conscious breath. So now, as you are listening to these words, I invite you to take a deep breath in and then exhale slowly, to recognize yourself as fully present in this moment. When you know how to look back at yourself, you will see that you have been through so much already. The joys and sorrows, the silent efforts, the falls that no one knew about, the sleepless nights that could not be shared with anyone. You have endured more than you say. You are stronger than you think. In each of your breaths, there is a long journey full of challenges that only you know clearly. So, if there are times when your heart feels tired, do not blame yourself for being weak. You just need to return to your own breath to soothe the cuts that life has left behind. In the Buddhist scriptures, there is a teaching that says the mind is like the surface of a lake. When the wind rises, the water is agitated. When the water is agitated, the reflection of the moon is not clear. But if the surface of the lake is still, then whether the moon is bright or crescent, it can be fully reflected. People are the same. When the mind is agitated, the path cannot be seen. When the mind is still, wisdom naturally shines. And that stillness begins with the breath. Therefore, the breath is not just life, but also the door that opens inward, the place where we find the stability that we have long been searching for outside. Many people think that happiness lies in grand things, but in reality, happiness is just a peaceful breath, a morning waking up without a heavy heart, an evening closing your eyes without any resentment, a day lived as lightly as the wind, at ease with oneself. All of these things begin when you accept to return inward, instead of chasing the endless demands of life. Once, a Zen master told a story about a person who came to him and complained that life was too tiring. The person spoke of a stressful job, of a tangled family life, of relationships that made him frustrated. The Zen master just smiled, gave the person a full glass of water, and said, "Pour more water in." The person did so, and the water overflowed. The master said, "The glass of water is like a person's mind. When it is full of afflictions and worries, it cannot hold anything else beautiful. To find peace, you must first empty your mind. And to empty it, you must first breathe. When the breath goes deep, sadness naturally lightens. When the breath expands, afflictions naturally dissolve. That story sounds simple, but it carries the wisdom of a lifetime. People suffer because their minds are always chasing after too many things, forgetting that peace is just a breath away. From that breath, we learn to look at life more lightly. We know that we don't need to compare ourselves with anyone because each person has a different journey. We don't need to try to prove anything because true value lies within our own peaceful minds. We don't need to blame fate because every challenge has its own meaning. Someone once asked me, "How can I master my life?" I said that first, one must master their breath. The breath is the root of all actions. An impulsive person always breathes rapidly. An anxious person always breathes shallowly. A frightened person always holds their breath. But a serene person will breathe evenly and deeply. The breath is the mirror of the soul. To calm the mind, one must let the breath be free. A deep breath can change an emotion. A slow breath can open up clarity. A full breath can bring us back to our true, gentle nature. Therefore, as you listen to these words, try placing your hand on your chest to feel the heartbeat that is still patiently beating for you. Place your hand on your belly to feel the breath that is still entering and exiting, nourishing you every second. You don't have to try to be someone else. You don't need others' recognition to feel your worth. You just need to return to yourself. Because peace comes not from what you achieve, but from the harmony between your mind and your breath. On the journey you have traveled, you may have compared yourself to others. You may have thought that others have more than you. But when you truly sit down and look back, you will realize that each person has their own lessons. Some have money, but lack peace. Some have fame, but lack freedom. Some have external happiness, but are empty inside. And you have things that you yourself have never realized. You have patience, compassion, and the strength to get through days when it seemed impossible to stand up. And you have your breath. Just one breath is enough to prove that you still have a chance to change your life. Once, a disciple asked the Buddha, "How can I see the truth of life?" The Buddha simply taught to dwell in the breath, because the breath is a place where there is no past and no future. It only has the present, and the present is the truth. When you breathe in, you know clearly that you are breathing in. When you breathe out, you know clearly that you are breathing out. That awareness makes the mind stop. When the mind stops, wisdom opens up. And when wisdom opens up, suffering is naturally untangled. That is also the reason why you need to return to your breath after a long journey. You have been through many parts of life. You have learned to control yourself. You have learned not to compare. You have learned to be your own master. And now is the time for you to enter the deepest part of transformation, which is returning to the breath, to return to the gentle nature within you. The breath not only helps you calm down, but also helps you open up a heart of gratitude. When you breathe in, you know that you are living. When you breathe out, you know that you are letting go of afflictions. Life and letting go are the two doors to happiness. A person who knows how to breathe is a person who knows how to live. A person who knows how to let go is a person who knows how to be at peace. From today on, I hope you will take back the power to master your own life. Do not compare yourself to anyone, because you are unique. Do not resent, for resentment only makes the heart heavier. Do not follow others, for everyone has their own path. You just need to live fully, every second, every minute, in awareness and in kindness. When your mind is right, the universe will bring the right people and the right events. When you live virtuously, life naturally becomes lighter. No one can take away your peace if you do not give it away. Happiness comes from a perceptive mind, not from the things you lack. A grateful mind sees life as full. A bright mind sees life as light. A peaceful mind sees every challenge as a lesson. And an awakened mind sees itself as the only one responsible for its own happiness. So now, as we conclude, I wish you peace on the journey ahead. I wish for you to return to the breath you have forgotten for too long. I wish for you to realize the strength within that you yourself once doubted. I wish for you to know that you are always worthy of a gentle and meaningful life, and I wish you steadfastness on the path of returning to yourself. You are not walking alone. You have your breath, you have your heart, and you have yourself. Be peaceful and awake.